Welcome everybody. Thanks so much for coming by. It's Chris Petri. We're going to do a beautiful sea scene here, seascape scene. And we have ocean waves. We have a beautiful sand dunes, figures on the beach, relaxing, having a great time in the beautiful, warm, sunny weather. We have a gorgeous sky. We're going to show you how to put all of these parts together into this one painting, and it's really a straightforward approach. The glazing technique we're going to cover here, and basically we're going to start out. We'll do the sketch first, which is very, very simple. We're just putting a couple lines on the paper for the ocean and the sand dunes. That's pretty much it. And then we're going to do our glazings, and we'll show you how to do a real carefree sky with not much fuss, a little bit of tissue to blot in some beautiful light clouds, leaving some white paper here. We're working from a photograph on a phone. So I have my phone. It's in the, you'll just notice when we start out the painting, my phone will be up here on the right-hand side, so you'll see the photograph we're working from. So we're going to work from a photograph in this video. And then once we get going, it'll just all come along fine. So you'll see how straightforward and actually how simple this is. It's not a very difficult painting to do. We'll get started in just a second. So grab the pencils, the paints, the papers, our brushes. Let's get going. All right, we just saw the finished painting. So we're going to start here and just kind of go through the process of how we're going to get everything prepped and ready to go for painting, drawing and painting here. Our sketch is going to be very quick and light, not too much details on this particular painting. Beautiful ocean scene, of course, with some beach and sand and weeds and grasses and all kinds of fun stuff that you'll see along the shore at the beach. Try to get ourselves in that mindset of being there, having a great time at the shore, relaxing, and we can even, just use that those thoughts and that energy to bring it into our painting. So let's see if we can kind of capture that. I'm going to use Studio Watercolor by Fabriano. So that's a 11 by 14 pad. I use other papers, so I'll kind of just let everyone kind of see what paper I'm using. But this is the Studio Watercolor by Fabriano. It comes in 50 sheets, and they're the tear-off sheets, so you can just open up and then just peel off the paper, 11 by 14 size. And you can get this really pretty much, Amazon has it, all your major art suppliers online. You can find it in your local art stores probably where you live. So excellent paper. I really find that it's really affordable and just produces great effects and just looks great, I think, when we're painting. So I like to use this a lot. And the next thing I'll do is I'll just mention it's good if you can purchase a couple of mats for yourself. So whatever size paintings you like to create, maybe you paint two or three different sizes when you're doing your watercolors. So you can buy the different mats that are close to the sizes you like to paint in. That'll work with your paper sizes. And this is an 11 by 14 mat here, which matches the 11 by 14 paper. And then the window's a little bit smaller than 11 by 14, and we'll use that here to start our video. And then this one here is a little smaller yet, so if you like to work a little smaller, or if, again, it's a lot of times it all depends, right? So whatever subject matter you might be painting, you might like to paint some subject matter like just a flower in a vase, so you might go with a smaller size like this, or you might make it a larger. It's up to you. You're the artist. You'll create your different sizes of paintings, landscape, if you're going to have it set as a landscape or a portrait. This one we're going to do in the portrait style. And again, these are even a little bit smaller mats, and so those are good to have. This way, if you start out and you trace, we'll do that in just a second. My brushes are going to be the Da Vinci travel brushes, the plastic travel brushes. Number 12 is the large and number 4 is the small. And then I'll use a number 8 Alvaro Castanet needlepoint brush. So these are the 3 brushes we use for this painting. And then I have my Schmincke palette. I customized it a little bit and filled it up with small and large pans. And double stick taped them down to the bottom of the palette. So I just modified it a little bit so that I could get more wells in here and more colors. And I even trimmed some credit cards down to small pieces and crazy glued those in so I could divide up my wells even more. So you'll see I have some dividers in my palette inside the large pans, which are just basically small pieces of credit card cut and crazy glued in there, and then I fill them up with paint. And let's get this started. Let's take a pencil and I'll sharpen the pencil a little bit. Okay, so I sharpen my pencil and then I just line this up on the paper, and then I just do a quick little super light pencil line like so. Just like that. And I lift up. It's barely visible on camera probably. And then what I'll do is, that's the opening for the matte window. And then I'll take my tape, my artist tape, and I'll set that artist tape up about another inch outside of that line we just drew, that pencil line, so that we have even a larger space. And this way we can make sure we have at least a little bit of extra room of painting on our paper, so that when we put our mat down, we're not trying to, you know, worry about if we have enough paint on the paper. It's enough to make it a little larger, maybe half an inch larger or 3/4 to an inch larger. So you paint the scene a little bit larger. Then once I do that and tape it, then I'll take a kneaded eraser and just lift up that light pencil line we drew. And as long as you get most of it up, it's fine. You're not going to see it because when we paint, it covers a light pencil line won't be visible once you paint over with washes. And then the next thing we'll do is we will work with our photograph. So I'll take my I'll use this as my my subject matter. So I'm using my phone, and maybe I can do this. Maybe that's a little better. The only thing is we're gonna do this painting in a portrait mode. So our paper is set up portrait, which is vertical. And then we're just going to look and say, all right, the ocean here is about a little bit under the halfway point along here. So then I can also go around my tape just to frame out what I'm doing here. So if I make a pencil line around this will help to confirm my boundaries for my painting. Then I'm going to go and say, all right, how much? So again, about a little bit under halfway here. So I'll come down this way, and if this is about halfway, we'll go a little bit under halfway, and I think that would be fine. You could also use a ruler if you want to get it perfectly straight. You could always measure with your ruler and say, let me see, I have a tape measure here, a little bit easier to see on camera. So I could take this and say, all right, that line is going to be 6.5 inches. So I make a mark there, 6.5 inches. Then I come over here, do the same thing, 6.5 inches. And then I can take my ruler and just drop it on there on the 2 dots, which were 6.5 inches. And then I can draw my pencil line across there. And then we have our water. So that's the horizon line of the ocean. Looks good. Then the sand dunes over here are just basically undulating shapes here, like so. So there's a sand dune there, like a little bit of a dune. And then there's another one over here. Okay, and it can be loose. It doesn't. We're going to paint in most of the details on this, so we're not going to get really super detailed on this. We want to just kind of get a fun rendition of this painting. We're not going to paint it, you know, and try to get every piece of grass or weeds or whatever. We're going to just use this as a basic guide for painting. So we're not going to get involved with the tremendous detail on this. This could be a photograph probably. I don't think it's a photograph. I think it's a painting. Might be an oil painting. I can't tell right now from here, but it could be an oil painting actually. I don't think it's a watercolor. It might be. Well, in any case, we're just going to use it for our own reference here. So, and we notice that the ocean itself is about, you know, 1/2 inch, 3/4 of an inch. Let's take a look, see. Yeah, about 3/4 of an inch. And then we could do the same method if we want and just say, okay, 3/4 of an inch, we'd make a dot here. 3/4 of an inch here, we make a dot. And then we go across, put our ruler on both of the dots, hold it down, and then do a light pencil line across there. And that's going to be where the sand starts, where the sand and the water meet, right here. So already we have most of our information, I think. This is actually what we needed to get started for our pencil drawing. We don't have, this is not a complex pencil drawing, obviously. I'm going to put a couple lines on my ocean here, just to remember to put in some white, leave some white paper there. So I want to leave some white paper along this, closer to the shore, if I can, just for some little waves coming in. Some white caps and foamy waves coming in here, crashing in along the ocean side here, and the sand. And we might even put in some, maybe we'll put a figure in here too. Let's put in a figure or two. Let's have a couple chairs here. A couple beach chairs. And a couple people at the beach here enjoying some sun and nice day out at the shore. And it's probably around noontime or early afternoon, so the shadows aren't too long. There's a little shadow under the beach chairs here, and so just a couple indications of some figures, and maybe there's, you know, a couple of duffel bags and some things. Maybe they're painting or drawing. And I think that should be good. Just a little indication of some figures, sand dunes. We're going to do some weeds and things like that, and some tall grasses. So these here, I might just do an indication just to kind of, so when we start painting, I kind of know how high these are going to be. So already I'll have an idea of how tall these grasses are going to be when I'm doing those last. Actually, we're going to do those last. The weeds and the sand dunes are last. We'll do the sky first, and we're going to get started painting in just a second. So I just want to make sure I have some just like that. And some grasses over here on the sand. And I think that is pretty good. Okay, we're going to get started in just a second painting. So what I'll do is when we come back, I'll just add a few colors. I think I'm running out of some colors here in my palette, so I want to make sure I have enough paint when I'm starting my painting. I want to clean up my palette a little bit too. So we'll come back in just a second and we'll start painting, and we'll just do a quick little cleanup of our palette, add some colors, and then we're ready to go in and paint. Okay, let's get started now. We're going to actually take a spritzer bottle, spritz our paint, spritz the palette just a little bit. Then I'll take some small pieces of paper towel, and I'll just make sure I have enough to just get up our paint here. So we're going to make sure that we keep our palette neat. So I'll just clean up the palette a bit here. Okay, and we need to add a few colors. So I usually keep my blues and purples and greens in this bag, so the cooler colors. We need some sap green. I use my apron to crack open these paint tubes. They often get very difficult to open after a while, so I just use my apron and it works perfect. It breaks them loose real simply. And let's see, we need some French ultramarine blue. That's cobalt. French ultramarine blue is here. French ultramarine blue. And I think we need some okay, I think this is yellow ochre. And this, I believe, is raw sienna. Yep. Raw sienna is much more transparent. Or is transparent. Semi-transparent, I think. I have to go back to my charts to see, but that's yellow ochre, so we need more raw sienna. Let's see if we have that. And we do have raw sienna here. Raw sienna dries up a little bit quicker than a lot of other paints that I notice. So then I'll just press that down in there. And that should be fine. And then we need alizarin crimson. So I'm just going to, I needed some of the, I don't think we're going to use alizarin crimson on this painting, but I'll just, since we're filling up our palette here, I'll just do that. And what else do we have here? We have, I think that's pretty good. Maybe some more Viridian. That would be in the other. So that's good. And then some Viridian. Okay, we're all set. We have our paints ready to go. Palette And paper's good. So the first thing we'll do is I'm going to move my phone just a little bit. We're going to do the sky wash first. And we're going to use the glazing technique here. So always remember, you'll always hear me talk about the glazing technique and the alla prima technique. So basically the glazing technique, all we're going to do is get in our light washes first over the whole paper. And then we'll go over with a second glazing. Once that dries 100%, then we'll go over with our darker tonal values. So for this here, for our glazing technique, we're going to get the blue sky in with some of the white clouds. And we're going to get the some of that blue, it looks like shadowy colors along the sand dune here. So we'll paint in some of that blue for the sand dunes very loosely. And we'll just get the whole paper covered with one glazing of a very light bluish green wash, with also some maybe golds in there too. So we're going to try to kind of, have a nice mixture of colors as we put the washes on. So we'll see how it goes. We're going to wet the paper first with clean water. So I'm just going to go on here and put some fresh clean water on the sky up here. And then as I come down, the paper, I'm not going to wet the paper everywhere. I'm going to leave some dry paper, some spots of dry paper here and there. Just do it randomly. And then just cover the whole paper randomly. It doesn't have to be everywhere. Just get some paint, some fresh clean water on there. And then once we're painting, we'll be careful to put our washes right where we want them. So, but I put most of the water up here. So I put a lot of water up here on the top, the very top of the sky. And then as I'm working down, I'll take that water and paint mixture once we get the paint on and kind of just work it down the painting. And my board's on a little bit of a tilt, maybe like a 10 or 15 degree tilt. So I have a board with some paper over the top of it so it looks good on camera. So now we're going to get our sky washes in. We're going to use French ultramarine blue, cerulean blue, which is like that medium blue, and the darker blue is the French ultramarine. We're going to add a little bit of some Viridian here. So let's get some Viridian green. It's a green, obviously like a turquoise green. So we're going to have a little bit of that in the sky. And then we'll also use a little bit of raw umber over here. Just a touch of raw umber with the Viridian. Just so we have a little bit of a warm and cool throughout the sky wash and the bottom of the painting. So let's see how it goes. You experiment with this, of course. So I'm going to get some paint up here. Blue, maybe a little more French ultramarine blue. And some cerulean blue. So we'll make it a little darker up here. And we're going to have some clouds over here on the right side. Then I'll pick up some of this too, the Viridian green. And we have to work a little bit expeditiously here. We do not want to delay and take too much time here. Try to work out the ideas beforehand and say, yeah, I want to, in the picture here we saw there's the white clouds on the right hand side, so we want to leave some white clouds over here maybe. And then again, raw umber in the sky a little bit. And then we can make an interesting sky like so. Maybe we add a touch of orange. I rinse off my brush, dry off my brush with a little bit of paper towel, and just get a little bit of orange for the bottom of the sky here. And then I just make those long sky strokes here, like, you know how the sky, as it goes back further into the distance, the clouds get thinner and smaller, and their clouds are bigger and fluffier up higher in the sky over here in the top of the picture. You can always take a little bit of tissue or paper towel and do a couple of you can blot up a little bit for some kind of cloud formations. You could tie them right in like that, and they could be like some. You can use tissue for that or paper towel. And then again, there's a little more orange and gold toward the horizon. And I just paint that right down where the water is. And then I'm going to take a touch, just a little bit of the orange and raw sienna or some raw umber, just to have some beach sand color on the beach sand area. And then you can just do that whole area with the orangey, with a little bit of raw umber and just a tiny little bit of orange. Orange, cadmium orange, can really be powerful. So that's just where you do a tiny little bit, just the tiniest bit of that orange, cadmium orange, and then you water it down, add some water to it, even put a little bit of the blue and Viridian green in it, just to kind of make it more mellow. And then we're going to use more blue to do some of the shadows over here. So the shadows are over here in the sand dunes, the shadows on the, like that. And you have to leave some white paper in the sand dunes too, over here, because there's some light coming in. The light's coming from this side of the painting, but pretty high up in the sky, so it's skipping over the sand dunes here, the light. So we just want to kind of capture that feeling of the light, sunlight, kind of, here and there in the sand dunes as well as on the beach. It's going to be all lit with sunlight on the beach and the ocean, and I think this is good. So now this is the part here where we're going to let this dry 100%. So we can use a blow dryer on this at this point, or you can let it dry for a couple hours. It depends what temperature you're working. Like, it's totally different if you're outside painting versus if you're in your house, in your studio, or in your living room or kitchen. You might have the heat on, or it might be a hot day, or it might be cold and cool. So if it's cool in your place, this will dry a lot slower. But if it's warm and it's very warm inside your place, let's say, if it's hot and sunny, if you live in a warm climate, well, then your papers are going to dry. Your paint and watercolor paper is going to dry fast. But if it's a little cooler temperatures, it's going to dry slower. So you have to really let this dry, though, 100%. So that's the way to do it is you let it dry like an hour and come back and see, and you just touch it a little bit. And if it's, you very lightly kind of touch it here and there, and you'll kind of see, and you can look at it too really closely, and you'll say, yeah, it looks dry. And it has to be 100% dry, though, because we don't want to go over damp paper with other washes, really, in a sense, when we're doing the glazing technique. I mean, you can, after a couple years of doing it, you can actually, that's one of the things with watercolor that's fun. The more work you do with watercolor and painting, you'll learn there's some times when you can actually start going in and working other washes while things are damp and wet. But does this make sense? If you're just starting out, or you've only been painting maybe 1 or 2 years, one of your things you're going to learn about watercolor is the drying times of when the paper's dry and the paints, and then when you can go back in and do paint and washes on top of something that might be just a little bit damp, or let's make sure it's dry, though. That's the easiest way. If you're kind of unsure about it, always let it dry 100%. If you're kind of getting the hang of maybe going in when it's a little damp and working around the painting, you can do that too, by all means. But best rule of thumb and the best way to just handle it is always let your paper dry 100%, and then go back in and do your second glazing over the top of this, and then you'll have no problems. Okay, so let's take a break. I'm going to let this dry for a little while maybe, and then I'll come back and we'll start up again, and we'll get our ocean in, our beautiful green, emerald green ocean in, and some weeds, or do our figures here, and we'll have some fun with the weeds and the grasses and things. Okay, so we'll be right back. All right, so we're just coming back. We're going to get started again with our second glazing, our second washes over the top of our first glazing, our first wash. You can see the paper is dry. I can put my hand on it and there's no problem. It might be a little damp underneath the top of the paper, but the top of the paper is completely dry. I did use a blow dryer on this. just for a few minutes, just to dry off the top portion of the paper. And that should be enough that we're not going to have any problem whatsoever to start painting over the top of this. And this is our photograph we're using. So we can leave this up here. This is going to be fine. And let's see, we have everything all good as far as our sketch. We had our couple of figures here on the beach. We have the ocean. Let's start our ocean mixes. So I'll take my brush and I'm going to add some green to this. So I'm going to make the ocean sap green. There might be a little bit of chromium of oxide, some olive green here. To get it a little bit darker, I'll use some burnt sienna, French ultramarine blue. So I'm going to use a mixture of quite a few. I'll use all my greens basically, except for chromium of oxide. I don't think I'll use any of that. I'm going to use viridian green, sap green, olive green over here, French ultramarine blue, and a little bit of burnt sienna, just to darken it up a little bit. And you can kind of see how I'm just mixing it up and getting it onto the palette, so I can kind of see the colors that I'm going to use here, and that looks pretty good. Maybe a little more, maybe some cerulean blue in there too. I think that would look good. And then now I'm just going to go in and start to paint right across the page like this. And I want to make sure that I leave white, small white bits of paper, like that. So if you can just, I'm using very thick paint though. There's not much, there's no water in here at all. I'm taking paint straight, if this makes sense, I'm taking paint straight out of my pans here, straight paint, and just putting it into the palette. I mean, you saw how all the different colors we just mixed. Straight paint, no water. My brush was damp. I rinsed off my brush and dried off a little bit of the water on a paper towel. And now I'm going to go in and take that straight paint and then just start getting that in here. And we're going to use a piece of tape. We're actually going to use some tape to get a straight line for the top of our horizon line for our ocean. And then as we get closer, I'm going to again rinse my brush, dry off my brush on a paper towel or a tissue. Then I'm going to use a little bit of viridian green like so. And then as we get closer to the shore, I'm going to use a little more of that viridian green. And you can kind of see how good that looks. It's a little bit lighter. And I'll even go in and get some raw umber, like that. And put a little bit of raw umber in the green here and there, just to have a little bit of like that. And then over here I'm going to, I'd like to keep this more, I'm not going to do, I want to leave the white paper more toward the center of the water here. Like that. And that looks pretty good. Now what I can do is to even make it a little more realistic looking, is I can take some tape. I can take some tape and go right across here, keep my tape just a tiny bit above that pencil line that we created earlier, which was the horizon line of the ocean. And all I'm going to do now is take my tape and leave it just a tiny bit above that pencil line that we made before, and then just make a bit of a straight line. So then I'll just take one of my brushes and set the tape down with the tip of the brush here, just to kind of put that very carefully though. Don't smudge any paint if you can. just to keep that tape down like that. Then what we'll do is we'll go in and we'll use a little darker wash. So let's go with the more French ultramarine blue and some burnt sienna and some sap green. And then we'll do that. We'll do that right across here. And you don't have to worry if you go over the top of the tape. That's why we put the tape on there, so you can get a perfect horizon line without sweating it and painting it by hand. You can actually have the tape help you to get that perfect line you want to get in the distance, like this, like that. Okay. And then all we have to do is carefully lift up like this. And that's it. And then you have a perfect horizon line for your ocean. And we'll let that set. We don't want to work over anything over here. We don't want to do anything until this dries 100%, that water horizon line. So let's leave that be. And then, let's see, let's do our figures. So our figures, let's make them, let's do some blue, green, maybe some gold. So I'm going to take, again, maybe I'll do some yellow ochre, some cerulean blue, straight paint, no water, really. And then I take my brush, rinse it off, dry it off on a paper towel. So here I have my tissue. And I just rinse the brush, dry off the brush hairs with a paper towel or a tissue. And then I'll do a little bit of blue for the shadowing, like that. And over here, maybe I'm going to go with some red, maybe some cadmium red. Maybe there's a red chair here, so we have a red and a... And then we have some another shadow, blue and green, like that. And then there's some maybe some duffel bags and things again, like we were saying before, a couple things on the beach with our two people here just enjoying this sunny day. And then we'll do maybe some hair, a little bit of hair, just a tiny bit, just like that. And that's just a suggestion of some people at the beach enjoying the day out here. And that's good. We don't want to overdo it. A couple, just some spots of color is really all we're doing. A couple spots of color. There's one kind of spot of color for the chairs on each side, and then one spot of color for the hair on the figures. And then a little bit of shadowing under them, and that is fine. That's all we need to do, just to give a suggestion. And then let's keep going. Let's do some of the sand dunes now. So I'm going to take the green that we have over here, add some raw umber to that. And there's some water in there, you can see. It's and then I will start to put some burnt umber in there, some cerulean blue, warm and cool. So cerulean blue, burnt umber. So I'm just trying to get in some of the areas that have some grass and some weeds. But I don't want to go too much. I think if we can keep it a little bit minimalized, you know, keep it minimal, not too much. You can just see I'm doing some very quick and fun. I'm going to add some splashes to it. I'm careful to do splashes. Those could be some small rocks. If splashes get if you think you did too many, you can always lift up a few, like this, with a little bit of a tissue. Just one little dab or two, and that's fine. And then there's going to be some weeds here, so I can start kind of pulling up some of that color for the weeds. Like so. And that's kind of good just to take some of that color and lift up a little bit of that color. It kind of ties it in real nice. And I think we can do a little more shadow colors. A little bit of that. So that's French ultramarine blue with a little bit of the green and burnt sienna mixed there. And that's just going to darken the shadows over here a little bit. Like that. All right, that looks good. And maybe I'll just, again, at the edges of the paper, I like to sort of not make too much of a big deal of the painting at that part of the painting. I'd rather keep the focus here more in the center of the painting, and then on the sides I don't want to have too much exciting things going on. If I can just sort of downplay the edges of the paper, most times it seems to work out better for the painting. All right, I think we're really getting there. This is looking really fantastic. Now, once we start putting in our weeds, you're going to see in our tall grasses that it's going to really just all come together and look really beautiful. So let's take another break. I just want to let this dry and set up a little bit so that our weeds, we can go over the top of these washes with some weeds, and it's not going to become lost, I guess, the weeds. You know, if we're doing fine weeds with our, and grasses and tall grasses with our needlepoint brush, we want this to be dry. So again, the glazing technique, we always talk about that. The glazing technique is sort of really, a lot of artists use the glazing technique, watercolor artists, and that's, you know, doing the light washes first and then going over with darker washes. So that's why I always do this technique a lot on my channel, so everyone gets familiar with it. And then we also do the alla prima method, which is basically painting everything at one time, the whole painting, and not really doing a glazing process so much. But not to confuse things, you'll learn it all here as you watch my videos week after week and month after month and year after year. So just stick with us here, and you're having a great time learning watercolor, a lot of fun. We're having all kinds of fun paintings we're doing. You can subscribe on the right hand side below over here on the bottom of the screen. This way you can keep track of me. You'll see my videos in your YouTube channel when you open it up the next time, so you won't have to go searching for me. YouTube will just make sure my videos will pop up in your YouTube channel when you open up YouTube the next time. And that's really, that's about it. If you like the video too, thumbs it up. That really helps a lot. If you're thumbsing up my video, that means more people will share it, and people will get more excited about it. And this way we can have more people joining along with us. And it's also good too, because we can all learn things in the comments section. So leave comments too. Leave comments in the comments section, ideas, questions you might have, anything like that. And the more people in the comments section, the more comments that come in, the more everyone learns. I learn a lot of stuff in the comments section. I'm always reading comments, and I thank you all for leaving them, and also all the kind words and encouragement. Really appreciate that so much. It really gets me stoked, and I always want to come back and paint each week on YouTube because of your kind words and encouragement, and it just keeps me going. So I'm going to take a quick break here, and we'll come back once this sand dune area dries, and we'll put in our tall weeds and grasses and finish this, and you'll see how gorgeous it's going to look once we're finished, okay? So I'll be right back, and again, thanks for watching, and we'll finish up our painting in just a second. Okay, we are back, and we're going to start doing our tall grasses and weeds along the sand dunes here. This is really going to make everything look fantastic. It's going to make the painting a little more three-dimensional. We'll feel like once the weeds and grasses are in, you're going to feel like the ocean and the figures are further in the distance, which will make a really nice effect. So let's we're going to carefully look at our photograph and notice that let's try to be a little more, we don't want to put as many grasses and weeds in this painting as we see here. I think it's important to say that. I'm going to go a lot less than what's here. I think for the way I paint, I try to like less is more attitude. So I think of what I'm going to do is just start putting in the grasses, the weeds, the tall grass, and as I'm going, I'll keep stepping back from the painting, kind of, leaning back and looking at it a little bit from maybe like a foot or two away from my painting, and start to see when I think it's going to be enough that it looks really good, but it's not too much. So let's try it out and go here, and I'll see how much we will do to make this look just right. But always keeping in mind that we want to not do as much as we see here. We want to go more minimal than this, because if we're going to paint all these grasses and weeds and things, it'll look kind of like a photograph. Maybe we don't want to have it look like a photograph so much. Maybe let's just put an indication of some weeds and grasses and things, but not put in thousands of them. I think we don't really need to do that much. So let's get going here. We're going to do some burnt sienna, burnt umber, French ultramarine blue, sap green. So I'm going to go across the top here, definitely raw sienna and raw umber. And again, some more sap green, olive green, cerulean blue. Okay, so we have a good mixture there of colors. Okay, now let's just, I'm going to start over here and work my way across this way. So I'm going to do some. And I'm just going to do some some indications of things. I don't want to go overboard here. And I will do some white paint, very, very lightly, some titanium white paint here and there where the ocean is, so that it'll light up the stems and the weeds and things. Now here, I will go faster and get some more weeds in here and things like that. I'm going to go quickly. Hold my brush up higher, like this. I'm going to do a little bit of darks in here, just to kind of have some shadow type shapes in there. And then a couple grasses here and there, but not going overboard. And then over here I can just maybe do a couple other somewhat sometimes I'll pick up my brush here, just do a little Not too many though. I think that's good over here. Good. And then we'll continue to cerulean blue, raw umber, burnt umber, kind of the colors I'm using here for the weeds. A couple details on a few of the weeds. Not too many though. I'm trying to keep this kind of minimal. Burnt sienna for some of those kind of warmer colors. And a little bit of a darker green, blue, burnt raw umber. I want to make sure I'm spinning to the right. That's kind of the winds are prevailing to the right here, so you'll see all the grasses and weeds sort of turning this way with the wind. And that's where I say we can leave this pretty much, I think, the way it is. Not too many more. I think that's fine. The way it is now, I think it's pretty good. And then the only other thing I think I'm going to do is add a touch of titanium white. So I'm going to find my titanium white over here. I rinse off my brush good. I'm going to put some new water in the water bucket, my water container. This way I can have, I don't want to contaminate the white paint that I have. So I take off the cap of my white paint, my titanium white. Then I take a little bit of yellow ochre on my needlepoint brush, and I just put it in there in the top and stir it around a little bit so that we get sort of a, a white that has got a little bit of the yellow in there, the gold. And that looks really, really good. It looks like real light. And so I'm going to do that. And then I'm going to take a fresh tissue like this, and dab off a little bit of paint. I don't want too much of that white paint on there. And what I'll do is I'll just carefully, very, very lightly, I'll try not to lean onto my painting at all. So I'm going to hold my hand on my canvas. So sometimes I put my hand underneath. So I rest my hand on top of my hand at the edge of my table so that I don't rest my hand down into the paint, because we just painted here. So you could either dry this off and then you can lean on it and work on it, or if you want to keep working, you just have to remember to maybe put your left hand, or if you're right-handed, you switch obviously you switch this around, but you take your hand, rest it on your board underneath your painting, and then you rest your arm on top of your hand, and then you can then you can just do a quick, like that. You can do a few of those, just a little bit of the white. And over here too. And a few here too as well. So I'll get some more. And these help to just couple of the white. A few of those white bits of light highlights. Not too many though, just a few. Really kind of spruce up the look of the painting. And that's why I'm not going to keep going and going and going with this. Just a few spots, and that's about it. And you could even do a few in the water if you wanted to. Just a couple, maybe a couple little bits of but we did leave white paper in the water, and that looks really good. I wouldn't do much of any white, titanium white in the ocean, because we left a lot in the ocean just with the white paper, so that's good enough. But if you did want to, or if you by accident, if you painted over the ocean and you didn't get much white, leaving your white paper, then you could add a little bit of titanium white on the ocean colors there. I think our figures look good. Everything looks, I think, just right. We didn't overwork it. That's the main thing. We left it a little bit underdone. You could always go back if you wanted to and, you know, add a few things the next day or something if you thought that you didn't quite have everything. This here is bothering me a little bit. I think that actually is... that looks better. And like that too. There we go. Just a few spots here and there. But that really does help to kind of highlight the weeds and tall grasses and things where the ocean is. Because if it just disappears there and you don't see it at all, it doesn't quite read right. So that's why we just add that little bit of highlight to the weeds and grass over here, and it's good to have maybe a little down in here too in the lower portion of this painting. What we can do now is maybe we can lift off the tape. It'll make it look much better too if we have that nice border around the painting. It almost looks like it's framed. And it looks good. All right, I hope we all had fun. Again, please subscribe so you can keep coming back with us and working along with us. We're doing everything watercolor. So we do beach scenes, we do flowers, still life, we do city scenes, cafes, we do figure painting, landscapes, houses, buildings. We do all kinds of fun watercolor. Everything watercolor and all kinds of subject matter, so you get familiar with everything. Maybe your favorites are oceans and beaches and flowers. I do a lot of those, so we're always going to do those, and then plenty of them. And then the other work we're going to continue to do. So we're doing everything here, watercolor. Thanks again for coming by. I really appreciate it. And we'll see you soon. And remember, enjoy the journey. The watercolor journey is a fun one. And we'll see you very, very soon. Bye-bye.